Hi, my name is Nolan Hack. I'm a black revolutionary from Los Angeles, California.
Hello, I'm Tracy from Nashville, and I'm sick tonight.
Hello, this is John Kane. I am a Mohawk. I live on the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. I am a Native activist, a radio show host, and freelance columnist.
Hi, I'm Tanja Burkhard. I'm a black German woman currently located in Pittsburgh and an educator.
All right. Fantastic Four is here. So tonight, the topic at hand, should we boycott everything? And I say that because we live in an extremely colonized world. It is nearly impossible for us to completely plug out of this system, because in many ways it's still the hand that feeds us, whether it's financially or us just trying to plug out and get some enjoyment out of life via the entertainment world. Just about whatever you do, whether you make a purchase, whether you participate in something, buying a DVD, listening to music, whatever it is, going to a concert. Whatever you do, you're most likely going to participate in is going to be connected to evil in one way, shape, or form. Which is why every time an R. Kelly song comes on my iTunes, I cannot listen to it anymore. I have to push skip. And right before the show, John was talking about how one Native nation is boycotting Israel for the what was the games again?
Well, no, it's just the opposite. The Iroquois Nationals, which is the team representing the Haudenosaunee, is participating in the FIL men's lacrosse world championships being hosted for some reason in Israel. And so what I was calling to question is, does it make sense for us to validate Israel's behavior, especially recent behavior, which goes deeper than that, in their relationship with Palestinians, by honoring them both with their hosting our game and with our participation in it. So I'd never even called it a boycott, but it does raise the question: what role do we have in assigning accountability to bad actors or bad behavior? And I think that's where the topic comes in so strongly.
And then, as I said before the show as well, we should boycott Israel. At the same time, why does U2 perform in the United States with all the match that the United States holds against people of color? Why does Coldplay or anybody else come in, to play their music? Why is the World Cup ever here? Why is the Olympics ever here, et cetera, et cetera? And the tough part about completely taking yourself out of the system and going, no, I won't participate in any of it. Like I said, it's virtually impossible to do that. For example, Black Panther, and no one is going to stop me from seeing, Black Panther again or enjoying it or celebrating it. Black Panther was produced by Marvel Studios, which is a subsidiary of Walt Disney Studios. Walt Disney was an FBI informant who was also an anti-Semite. Apple made the computer I'm using right now to participate and host this panel. Apple's also helping China censor the internet. If you drive a Ford car, you are driving a car named after a man who created the company, Henry Ford, anti-Semite, and a friend of Adolf Hitler. So it's very, very, very difficult to completely plug out of the system and say, no, I'm not with that. I'm not going to participate in that because that is connected to that, and that's evil. I don't want anything to do with it. So I pose the question to tonight's panel: should we boycott everything?
I don't believe it's possible to boycott everything. Even in communal societies where people live in like communal compounds, you still have to eat. You still have to pay property taxes. I mean, it's just impossible to completely cut yourself off from the state and from just day-to-day living. And I also believe you have to pick your battles. We'll spend our entire life consumed in trying to screen absolutely everything and won't be about the business of living and doing the work. There's more work to freedom than boycotts. Now, that's not to not boycott. They have proved effective throughout history. So that's not the position that I'm taking. But I do believe you have to pick your battles.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But even more than that, I think if you boycott everything, then you're not really making a specific statement. And I think the whole idea of a boycott is to make a specific statement, utilize whether it's an event or a product or the action of a company that produces a product, and let it connect to something. Simply not participating or purchasing or or whatever with silence doesn't necessarily get you there. So I don't think I don't think boycotting everything really works. I think you have to target it, and I think you have to include with a boycott a statement of purpose and that kind of thing. And it gets down to the whole idea of voting with your dollars, as they say, and making some real choices. When people talk about divestment with who they bank with and that kind of stuff, a lot of the divestment movement, well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily get labeled as a boycott, but it essentially is. So I think I think there has to be a targeted goal when you're doing a divestment or a boycott or a shift in your lifestyle or purchasing. So you make a statement with it. And in the absence of boycotting, I think to do something that sends a signal. The idea that Black Panther was so successful sent a strong signal to Hollywood. It sent a strong signal to the industry, and so sometimes the opposite can have an effect too. I would argue that if the Iroquois Nationals went to Israel and beat the hell out of the Israel team wearing a Palestinian patch on their uniform, that could be a pretty strong statement to make as well. So these things don't make money, but they certainly do bring attention to the host countries, and so I think there's a bigger debate about that goes beyond just boycott or not boycott. The point is, how do you utilize the sale of a product or the hosting of an event or various types of entertainment to make a statement? Obviously, one of the other things that's coming down the pike is the NFL decision to fine players for kneeling during the national anthem. Where does that leave a number? Where does that leave people when it comes to what they're going to do with especially if they're devout football fans? Will they boycott watching football? I didn't watch a football game all last year. I didn't watch a single one because of the Colin Kaepernick stuff. And frankly, if I was interested, I knew I could always catch the scores if I was really that interested. But and I'm a bit of a sports fan, but I find it real easy to cut that stuff out of my life when I think that there's these pro sports are tied to injustice. So that's my thoughts.
Tanja, should we boycott everything?
That was there were a lot of good points in that, and I also wanted to add that sometimes the ability to boycott comes with a certain level of privilege. Because I remember I lived in a remote place when I first came to the U.S., and my colleagues were shocked that I had bought a coconut from Walmart, and they were like, "Oh, how can you shop there with their unethical workers' practices and all this stuff?" And I'm like, "It's literally the only place I can access." And so yes, me not buying my food there wouldn't, I mean, maybe that would make them feel better or would make me feel better at an ethical level, but ultimately I still needed to get my food. So you can only do a boycott if you have options to divest and options to go elsewhere, and there's some sort of collective effort. If I'm not going to Starbucks anymore, maybe I'll feel okay or better about myself, but it's probably not hurting Starbucks. So the idea to have some sort of collective effort behind it and or other symbols or messages is something that I think needs to happen. Otherwise, it's ineffective. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
I think that gets lost a lot of times. People would just throw out, I guess you could say, ignorance, anger at somebody for not being a part of a certain movement because they don't know that that person can't participate. Because, like you just said, oh, it's the only place I could go and do that. So, back off for a second. It's a good point. There's a lot to this. There's a lot to this because there's so much of it that we're connected to, and we need to. I think what just Tracy said, pick our battles.
Well, we are consumers, and the American system that we're all somewhat affected by, some more than others, is to be over consumers. The overconsumption in the American capital system is what drives. Heck, it even drives partially the global economy. So the question is, what do we do with that buying power or that buying propensity? And I think that's where the question comes in, I guess. And how do we make sure that our dollars not only support the things that we want to support when we can, and Tracy's absolutely right. This boycotting can also be very, very much tied to privilege, because when you are of limited means because of these the policies that have been imposed upon so many of us, we may not have a whole lot of luxuries in our lives, and frankly, we all need something, and not just the basic necessities. In order to live a meaningful life, look, some of that might be entertainment, and it maybe that necessity to release as a sports fan even, or whatever it is. I mean, the idea, who ends up being more affected by a boycott? The one who is doing the boycotting, the one who is being boycotted. And I think if you can't swing it to the point where your impact is where you can still have not feel such an overbearing sense of deprivation, but at the same time, versus giving, sending a strong signal to the entity you're trying to boycott. I'll give you an example of an effective boycott. When back near Seneca territory in western New York, which is near Buffalo, New York, there was a suburb of Buffalo, a very white suburb, and called Lancaster, the village of Lancaster, and their school mascot was the Redskins. So they were the Lancaster Redskins, and we were a part of trying to push back on that logo. First, a group of us were invited to come in by the school board to discuss what the Native perspective was on it. But as this started heating up a little bit in the media, first there was a school called Akron, which is where the Tonawanda, the public school district that serves the Tonawanda Seneca territory. They made an announcement that they were going to boycott competition against Lancaster High School, not just because of the logo, but because of the racist comments that their Native players received from those players. So there was that. Then another school jumped in, which is one of the school districts that's associated with the territory that I live on the Cattaraugus territory. Lakeshore High School did. And then another school district that services the Tuscaroras, which is up near Niagara Falls. All three of these schools announced that they would boycott competition against Lancaster, and that boycott had as much effect on that school and on that school board voting unanimously to change that mascot as really as much as any of the other work that we had done. So the idea that wasn't going to stop these guys from having a season one way or the other, but it had an effective punch to it.
You bring up a good point there, John, about weighing the impact versus how much energy you or the people involved in a specific boycott would have to put in. Does the end justify the means? And a lot of times I don't think we take that into account when we do boycott.
Well, and I think we also don't sometimes weigh in how easy it may be to boycott on other, that's the other thing. I mean, there's certain things that if you can just make a choice between choice A and choice B, if you have that choice, and you know that one choice is not going to leave you deprived much, but it's simply just making a better, a political or social choice, I think it is really sometimes very easy for us to just do what we always do. We're stuck in this paradigm that we don't like to shift much. And I think this is where this idea, again, of voting with your purse or voting with your wallet and doing the kinds of things that that bring out some accountability to, again, to a product or a service or a celebrity. I think these are the kinds of things that I think we should attribute somewhat of a cost to when somebody is standing up as a bad actor.
Yeah, I didn't see the award show or those pre-shows they have about it. I think it was the Kane Film Festival, and I think it was Al Jazeera. It had like a 2-minute clip of women there at the awards or film festival, whatever, and they showed Kate Blanchett, and they were talking about how they're all in solidarity with Me Too and against sexual violence and against male predators and all that. And I'm like, wait a minute, Blanchett. I saw the movie she won an Oscar for, and it was made by Woody Allen. That was within the last 5 or 6 years. Woody's been pegged as a dirty, disgusting dog for a long time. But then she's part of this movement to try to stop sexual violence. Like A and B don't go together. I think that's another problem we run into with boycotting and the movement in general, because certain movements are corrupted. And my curiosity gets the best of me sometimes. I saw some article that said that Jesus is helping the poor or helping the movement or something like that, because Reverend Barber, I think is the brother's name, he's one of the leaders of the new Poor People's campaign. And I was like, I wonder if they're connected to anybody unsavory. So I just went to the website, scrolled down, there you go, Women's March right there. So that makes boycotting and putting work together within the movement even tougher. So I think there's a lot of landmines for this stuff. And I think, like with you brought up the NFL, John. Chris Long is a Super Bowl champion with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he plays in a stadium named after Abraham Lincoln, one of the worst men who ever lived, giant racist. And he plays Washington twice a year, 2 times. Has not said a word about his stadium, not said a word about Washington, not called them out, and yet everyone's like, oh, what a hero this guy is, standing up for. Well, I don't know what he's standing up for, but they say he's standing up for racial injustice. But a lot of landmines with boycotting and this type of stuff.
Well, but the point is to point out the hypocrisy. I mean, when you said something that A and B don't go together, B does follow A. So, or even like Kate Blanchett. I mean, the fact that she won an Oscar or whatever in a Woody Allen film, and now has joined the Me Too movement. I mean, I don't mind somebody changing their position or changing their stripes, as long as they own what they did in the past. And I think that's the whole idea of all of this. I mean, the issue that I have with Iroquois Nationals going to play lacrosse in Israel is twofold. One is this terrible stuff that Israel is doing to the Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, is one thing. But then when I find out that the reason the Iroquois Nationals, part of the reason they're going is because Israel is willing to accept the Haudenosaunee passports. So if travel documents, which is something that we should be pushing on the world stage, even through the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, all by itself, if we're going to look the other way on Israel because they're going to blow a little smoke up our ass by saying, oh yeah, we'll recognize your passports, just come here and play lacrosse, we end up in a situation where we validate somebody's behavior because they have something they're dangling, in front of us on a string. I mean, and the same thing happens with technology. A lot of times Israel has been very good at advancing certain technologies, medicines and other things. And so they dangle that willingness to partner with certain people, and they've reached out to even Native peoples, Seneca Nation. But I think at some point you have to own what comes along with that, and I think that's the difficulty in all this stuff. Because you're right, Nolan. We can find, if you look closely enough, you can find a reason to hate on everything. So the point is, what can you be the most effective with in terms of making a statement on how you interact, whether you boycott or whether, even if you don't boycott, if you do purchase or participate in a relationship with somebody that you're vocal about it. Like I said, I think there's a couple of different ways to approach this.
Tanja, what are your thoughts on that in terms of the picking your battles side of it?
I mean, I think we have no choice for people who pay taxes, for example. The money goes in places that we really don't have control over. So really the only thing that we can do is ask for transparency and ask for things to be different. But and we can boycott. I think there's different levels of boycotting too. If you don't listen to an R. Kelly song because it's a moral offense and he's not winning or losing money if you already bought his album. But I think that there are things that we do to clear our space from certain connotations, like predators and those kinds of things, that may not have a lasting impact. And then there are other things that we do where we actually are thoughtful about where we put our money, if we have expendable income or if we have money that we can invest in a place that sends a message that we support. But I think it's the whole idea of boycotting everything or nothing is very complex to me, because sometimes we have so little control over where our money really goes and where the affiliations are of the places that we give our money to. So, yeah, picking our battles. If we do know, then we can make an informed decision. Otherwise, it's kind of just not a lot of impact that we can have otherwise.
I think one of the simple decisions is something like Papa John's, is when they had the whole thing about the protests are wrong, you stand up, the players are being ridiculous. So that one's easy. There's pizza places all over the country, even chains, you have Domino's or Little Caesars, whatever, Pizza Hut. But something like music television, that becomes a little tougher because, especially those of us who are in the movement and are people of color, especially Black or Indigenous people, we need those escapes just to survive mentally and have an escape from all this mess. So, at least from my standpoint, I would give more leeway to folks when they're in taking music or movies, anything in the entertainment world. But then at the same time, I won't get on anybody who says, I'm never listening to R. Kelly again. I'm never going to listen to James Brown again, who's a domestic abuser. It is what it is. But I think the key point, underlying point tonight, is picking your battles. And I want to bring up this point again because it just gets at my curiosity a bit. And I'm not a major fan of hypocrisy either. Looking at Israel, a genocidal state, and some state that is pummeling Palestinians, also doing horrible things to the small Black population there, along with anybody else who isn't white and Jewish. Now, they should be boycotted, like I said. But then look at the United States. I had never really heard of a big, giant boycott of a country like Israel or the United States, one of the bigger countries in terms of the world stage, and a boycott. And so, this whole BDS is boycott Israel. But then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. The U.S. is doing the same thing to Black and Indigenous people and really any people of color. They treat women horribly. They treat transgender people horribly, et cetera, et cetera. Where is the call to tell, Akon, don't come over, don't do your music over here, Or where's the call to Chris Martin of Coldplay, don't play in St. Louis tomorrow, Maybe that's just me. I just want to put that on the table, see what everybody thought.
Well, you make a point, though. I mean, there's a big difference, and the big difference between the United States and a country the size of Israel is you attribute Israel as a country to all things Israel, but the United States you don't look at it that way. I mean, because there's regions, there's populations, the splits are there, the ethnic divisions. So to tell somebody, boycott the United States, that's not the same thing as saying boycott Baltimore, or St. Louis, or a town that's mired in some sort of controversy over the killing of a Black man or an injustice of a marginalized people. I think there is a time to say to a city, and we've seen this with the NCAA refusing to let certain cities, because of where they stand on LGBT issues and some other issues, that they wouldn't let a city host one of their tournaments. So in the United States, you almost got to look at it by region and by people, the people that you're trying to affect. It's almost impossible to boycott the entire country, and even Israel. I mean, to the extent that I think that there should be some sort of statement made by the Haudenosaunee with this lacrosse tournament being hosted by them is one thing. But the idea that you think you can boycott all of Israel because, as Tanja said, tax dollars, there's billions of dollars worth of U.S. Support that goes to Israel. So unless you can somehow not pay taxes, like I don't, then you are in a way you're supporting Israel. Not to mention, although this is never really talked about in the way that people talk about people of color who are immigrants sending money back to Mexico or Honduras or any place else, there are billions of dollars that go into Israel from American Jewish businessmen and people who are, in everything from banking to the legal profession to the entertainment industry. So if you simply go to the movies, you may be indirectly supporting Israel through through perhaps no knowledge of your own, but when you consider the millions or the billions of dollars that flow into Israel from the private sector in the United States, there's no way to avoid it, to do a straight up full bore boycott. So again, to Tanya's point, you got to pick your battles, and you have to figure out, well, what can you do that makes a statement, and what can you do that will have the most effect. And that effect may not be to end exactly what you're trying to impact. It may be just making sure there's a strong statement associated with it. I mean, and I think, whether you buy that, what was that? Wasn't there a soda machine or something like that a bunch of actresses were promoting, and I think that thing kind of fizzled away because that was an Israeli product, and it was being specifically attributed to supporting Israel somehow. But I think that's an example. Okay, that's a specific product that seemed to have legs when it first started out, and then once the negative connotations started being associated with it. Because here's the thing, for me, I'm not going to take an anti-Semitic view of this. I'm saying no, it's the behavior. It isn't about a Jew versus a Muslim or or versus a Christian or anything else. I mean, I think the role that religion plays is detrimental. All organized religions, I have some level of trouble with. The problem I have is the idea of shooting unarmed protesters, regardless of what the reason is. And so that's what I'm opposed to. Do I think that Israel or that Israelis have a right to be in the Middle East? Sure they do. But it seems crazy for me to listen to somebody say, well, we have a $4,000 or 4,000 year connection with this land, and then I think about Jewish Americans who have done everything they can to negate native land claims, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg citing the doctrine of Christian discovery in a land claims case with the Oneidas back in 2005. So it's about pointing out the hypocrisy of it all and finding the best and the most effective way to do that.
Well, you had a movie called, you had two movies technically, just because you starred in the other one. One was called Wonder Woman, that made $822 million, has a Rotten Tomatoes rating of 92, and that was literal Israeli propaganda. And then she was also in the Justice League, which made $658 million. And that makes you think, well, there was a significant call to boycott Wonder Woman, but then you wonder, was the ball dropped, or was there not a big enough push to boycott it? Because you see with the NFL, the attendance has dropped. The ratings have dropped because of what Kaepernick sparked, because of the take a knee protests, and the NFL having so many black fans. So making sure certain boycotts have an impact, I think, is very important too, and not just talking. You actually want, putting your money where your mouth is, because there are. Gal Gadot was in the IDF, in the armed forces of the Israeli army. There are so many boys and girls who are Israeli who look up to her, and it reinforces in their mind that Palestinians are animals, and then the whole it strengthens Israel's genocide over Palestine. And
I just don't think the narrative was that clear. I don't think making that connection between the character or the actress playing the character and what she represented, I don't think that there was an effective narrative to that, and I think that's why the boycott, that boycott in particular, didn't have have as much effect as one would have thought it should have. Yeah,
which is a definite shame, because if you look for the connections, they were there in Israel. In terms of pulling that off, they did a good job pulling off and spinning that into propaganda. But I'll pose this to the group because we all have different things that we like personally. Whether it's music, restaurants, sporting events, whatever it is. How hard is it for you individually to make those judgment calls when you see something like, John, you said the NFL, I didn't watch a game this year. How hard is it for you to make those judgment calls when you see something like Wonder Woman or the NFL happen, or like Kendall Jenner with the Kylie Jenner, the youngest Kardashian one, with the Pepsi ad, giving it to the police officer, like, oh, the cops are fine, everything's fine. How hard is it for you all to make that judgment call to boycott or to not boycott?
Boycotts are not difficult for me. It's nothing too difficult on an individual level. I don't care a rat's butt about sports, so it's nothing for me not to watch an NFL game. There's no sacrifice on my part there. The same goes for Pepsi. I mean, I'm not a big soda drinker, but there are too many other things to choose from. Boycotting entities like Walmart, as Tanja mentioned before, can be a challenge. Where I live, there's nothing in walking distance. And because I have a back injury, I don't go to the store and shop. I order my groceries online for pickup. And Walmart offers that service in my town. The other grocery stores don't. Kroger does. But they're all on the other end of town anyway. So it's not difficult for me to decide when I'm going to put my foot down about something, whether that's a boycott, whether that's calling and emailing companies, faxing, whatever it takes to get through to someone to answer to me for what I've observed or what I believe has happened, to get someone to address it. It's not a stressful thing for me. I believe that for large-scale boycotts to work, people, have to get over their, I believe that John mentioned this earlier, consumerism. Oh no, I want my Nike shoes. I know you don't think I'm missing the next pair of Jordans. That attitude. We've got to get past the consumerism and decide, is that pair of shoes that will look horrible in 6 months or a year worth 15 years of dehumanizing behavior? But for me personally, it's never been a difficult call to make.
Yeah, I think it's fairly easy for me to make certain decisions about my consumption and the things that I buy. But it's not even just about, like you said, it's not just about boycotting necessarily. I'll give an example again. I live on the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and I have a number of business entities that support the work that I do, and a couple of them own gas stations. So if I need to gas up my car, I'm always going to go to their gas stations because they in turn support what I do. So I patronize their business. So sometimes it's about, not just about boycotting to make a statement about who I'm not buying from, but it's about supporting who I am buying from and that kind of thing. But I agree with Tracy. I think this obsession with consumerism and branding and being drawn to it. I mean, I heard a stat that said a 4-year-old can recognize up to 3,000 brand logos. by the time they're 4 years old, can recognize up to 3,000 brand logos, whether it's the McDonald's arches or the Burger King buns or, the Nickelodeon, image on TV. 3,000 at 4 years old. And yet they wouldn't be able to tell you an oak leaf from a maple leaf. Man, that's just kind of sad. And that gives you an idea of what we're, inundating our kids with, again, the one thing we should learn to boycott would be a little bit of that television impacting our kids so much.
That is the truth. Yeah. Roseanne, I'm amazed that thing came back on the air. That is, I shouldn't be amazed. It's like, is this really coming back? And then they spin it the way they spun it. Hopefully that thing gets canceled very soon. Tanja, how difficult is it for you to make that judgment call, to boycott or not to boycott?
Roseanne is a good example because when I was a kid, I really loved the show a lot. And when I heard it came back and what it was about, it didn't hurt me at all to not ever watch it or even read anything about it. I made conscious decisions to boycott a few things like Monsanto, and that actually took a lot of effort because I had to figure out what all Monsanto owns and which brands they also have under their label, and then to not buy those in particular, even if I had them before. So that wasn't easy, but it was easy to do. It just wasn't easy to figure all of the dimensions out from conglomerates and where all they have their, what all they have their fingers in. With music, I found it harder on a personal level, just because artists do problematic things or say problematic things, and I don't mean sexual predators. I mean more people like Erykah Badu, who have said some things that I absolutely don't agree with. But I have not stopped listening to her music, mostly because I think that if I hadn't known some of her personal beliefs, I still would have listened to her music regardless. I don't know what she would have to say for me to stop, but she's someone that I'm holding on to a lot. So I wonder how far it has to go for me to boycott someone who's a black woman. And I think, yeah, it would have to cross some sort of line for me. So those are harder for me. The artists I have an actual long-term emotional connection to. But brands and all that stuff and those consumerist things, I don't find it hard at all.
Yeah, I'm with that, Tanja, because recently my favorite artist since I was 14, man by the name of Nasir Jones, aka Nas, and I bought an album of his. It was the first album I could buy when I was a kid that I had my own choices. My dad finally took the reins off. So, all right, you can listen to whatever you want now. That was the first thing I bought, and my favorite songs on that album. I've listened to his other albums, and he's been doing it for like 20-some years. And it comes out recently that he abused Khalees, who's a talented artist herself. I also learned, even this was years ago, he'd give white people N-word passes, including Gwyneth Paltrow of all people. So that's been really difficult for me as well. And then you also factor in most celebrities are just bad people because power corrupts. And then you add in the whole race factor. A lot of them are white, and most white people are racist, and then we get into a very complicated math problem. But I mean, R. Kelly, John Lennon, Nas,
Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby. Oh, this is going to TV. I mean, geez.
Yeah, let's stay out of TV because we'll be here all night.
You would be here today. You go into movies, Weinstein. I mean, my goodness, Gene Autry, et cetera, et cetera. So that's very, very difficult for me at least as well, because one, a lot of these artists or shows, movies, whatever, you grow up with, and then even to this day you enjoy them. They give you enjoyment to this day and help you get away from the evils of the world, the depressing things in the world. And my favorite sports team my entire life has been the San Francisco 49ers. So when this whole thing happened with Kaepernick, and I'm a black dude, I'm fairly young, I'm looking at all this like, this is and it's us? Seriously? What? And I believe he's our first black quarterback. So the whole thing was just surreal for me. And I'm still a fan. I have a love but more hateful relationship with the team now for what they've done to him and the spineless stance that they've taken. But yeah, it gets very difficult to try to draw those lines with things that we enjoy. I think that's what makes it tougher. If they bring us enjoyment, it's harder to cut the cord. You look at products, that's a little like Tanja, you said it, and Tracy, you said it as well. Big Coke Industries, they own a lot of stuff. I think you said Invista, didn't you, Tanja?
Oh, I was talking about Monsanto.
Monsanto. I don't know why. Yeah. I got my wires crossed.
They're all the same.
Yeah, they are. Yes, that is true. But the Koch brothers and the Coke Industries own a lot of different stuff. I mean, they own Dixie Cups, Vanity Fair, Sparkle. They own Georgia Pacific, which is a giant plywood manufacturer, the biggest in the United States. So that's easier because there are more, 9 times out of 10, there are an alternative to these things. Like they have Angel Soft is one of the toilet paper that Coke Industries makes. Well, then you can get Charmin, something else. So in some areas it's much more difficult than others to make that judgment call and say, okay, I'm not going to give them my business. I'm not going to help the bottom line. That's I guess a much easier thing to do usually. But looking at that line of thinking with entertainment, you mentioned the show Roseanne came up, Tanja, and I'd like to ask y'all what is a instance recently or semi-recently where somebody or something, whatever it is, it came out that entity was problematic. I'd just like to know what you did after that news came out. Did you, okay, wait, now I'm done with it, I'm throwing the albums in the trash, or I'm donating that cereal to the Goodwill, or I just like to know what happened in that situation for each of you.
Or the bigger question, that Tanja, I think, mentioned is what does somebody have to do? Where does the line get drawn? And I think, yeah. I mean, I became Michael Jackson was, is one of the biggest names, of all times as it relates to music. But I was really troubled by some of the allegations and some of the strange behavior and that kind of stuff. And, and I'll take it even beyond, the pedophile stuff and all that other stuff. When I think about some of these entertainers that have committed suicide, Robin Williams, for instance, I mean, I have a hard time, heroizing somebody who checked out, because I don't want to romanticize for me or for the people around me that somehow that suicide is a viable option. That somebody should be considering when they're whether it's depression or anything else. So there are things like that make me change the way I view not just an entertainer or a service or a product, but they give me pause about how much I want to continue to embrace, even the positive impacts that a person, a product, or a thing might have contributed. Those are just two examples. Robin Williams comes to mind, and Michael Jackson.
Yeah, Michael is a very, very complex situation. I've read things by reputable outlets, Vanity Fair included, that there was child porn all over his place, and then I've heard from other outlets, no, they didn't find any child porn, but then you still have the allegations, so it's like, that's a whole tricky box to try to jimmy open. Tanja, you mentioned Roseanne. You got another one for us that you've dealt with in the semi-recent past?
Well, I'm always, this is, Neve Schulman, for example, from Catfish, which is not, I'm not super attached to the show, but I used to watch it a lot and when it first came out, and it's one of those things where you see a person on TV and you kind of attach some sort of personality to them, even though you shouldn't, and you know this as an adult, but you kind of think, oh, okay, seems like a nice person or whatever. And then you see video footage of him shoving someone, and you hear allegations of all the sexual misconduct. And for me, I feel like I'm getting disappointed as a person, even though I have nothing to do with these folks, and we don't even live in the same reality, I think. But at the same time, it's a constant reminder how pervasive some of this behavior is, even in people who portray themselves to be for a certain cause. Like, he always has some sort of social justice cause that he supports, and he talked about Me Too. And so I think that's something that the movement has brought forth, is whether we should separate the artist from the message or not, and then if we can't, what do we do with this artist or this personality and the product that all the things that they've done. So is everything invaluable that they've done? So yeah, that was one that was a little bit of a shocker for me. But I don't know why it is, because clearly there's a really pervasive issue. There are lots of pervasive issues, but that's one. So yeah, it was a reminder. A lot of creeps.
Yeah, too many. Tracy, you got one?
I'm not really attached to things. So, I don't know. It's just not difficult for me. I don't have, a favorite star. I don't fangirl over anyone. Don't listen to a lot of music. The only thing that I could honestly tell you it would kill me to give up is coffee and chocolate. And that's really kind of it. And I would live, obviously, without either of those things, but I would be a miserable, cranky bitch. And I don't use the B word when I refer to women. So, I'm taking me seriously when I say this. But it's really just not something that I can live without. There's not many things in this world that I take that I just have to have, and it's meaningful for me outside of family, friends, and humanity, That's really about it on my end.
Well, I'll name someone who I still like, but has done something problematic that is stuck in the back of my brain. Jeff Goldblum A lot of people my age like Goldblum for a variety of reasons. And he was in a Super Bowl ad with Lil Wayne, and I never really cared too much for Lil Wayne's personality. I do enjoy his music. But they did an ad, and it was a Super Bowl commercial, and I think it was about 3 years ago. And they were in an apartment enjoying the game and barbecuing, and there's George Washington. So you have a young black man, middle-aged white dude, George Washington, and everything's fine. And I'm just sitting there watching this. I know I'm not I can't be the only one watching this thing. This is complete bullshit. I can't be the only one. But as I say that, I have found that when you cut the cord with those celebrities, especially, you will isolate yourself from a lot of people. Because, I'll give you another one, Beyonce and Jay-Z. Black people adore Beyonce, and she's talented as hell, she's beautiful. Jay-Z's very talented. But they both endorsed Hillary Clinton for president. Beyonce went so far to go right down the master slave line and performed for Hillary Clinton during the campaign. So I'm one of the few people in the corner going, why are we celebrating this woman? Like, if you want to talk about the music, let's talk about the music because it's great. But why are we celebrating this woman? She sold us out. She stabbed us in the back. So did her husband. But being in that minority, I'm like, whoa, calm down. Viola Davis is another one. Incredibly talented. She should win as many awards as she's gotten, probably more. But she also endorsed Hillary. She actually did she put out a video with Kerry Washington, Shonda Rhimes, somebody else, and her. I mean, if they'd done that for Trump, people would have lost their minds. Of course, if you study the two people, they're basically the same. But the point being, you will find, if you start chopping up cords to celebrities, especially in our communities that we like, even Cosby to a point, there are way too many black people, especially black men, who go, no, it's a conspiracy. He was trying to buy NBC, and they blocked him, so they made all this stuff up about these women, and they paid these women off. So it gets that's another area of a problem when you. I guess the more aware you are of the system the way it is, and the people who have a bit of power or privilege, and I'm a bit remiss to use the word privilege with a person of color, but that they have more privilege than the average black person or average person of color, because most of these people enjoy these celebrities and these shows and these things. So you kind of isolate yourself a bit when you go out on that limb, whether you say, okay, I'm done with them, or if you just call them out, like Tanja, you said about Erykah Badu. And I'm in a similar boat that you are with Badu. I'm like, sister, why don't say that? Stop talking. I love your music. You look like Africa in one photo, like the motherland is just all over your form. I love it. It's beautiful. But stop talking. Yeah. It's a hard. It's hard when you take a hardline stance with boycotting different things that relate to us, I should say. To complete my point.
Well, and again, some of it isn't even just boycotting. It is speaking out. And I think it is reasonable for anybody who somehow finds themselves being forced into a conversation about the wonderfulness of a product or of a person. I mean, to say, yeah, but look, that person may be talented, maybe a great actor or an actress, maybe a great musician, singer. She may be beautiful. He may be, a great athlete. He may be this, whatever it is. But at the same time, I think that as consumers, we better make sure that we don't buy into it so much to the point that we create these iconic idols, that and get involved in the idol worship of these individuals. I think it's fine to recognize somebody's talent, and but again, when that person starts using their celebrity to endorse an idea or a concept or a candidate that you don't support, then again you get into that spot where you got to decide, well, am I at least going to speak out against that endorsement, or am I going to go farther than that and say, no, I'm no longer a fan? And I think while it might be easy to again not draw such a close relationship with these people who you really don't have a relationship with, it's still easy to be caught up by the celebrity of these individuals, and I think that's I think we need to guard against that anyway. But certainly I think the choices we have when we feel like we've been wronged by a celebrity, whether it's societally or socially or personally or whatever, is to whether we speak out against them or whether we simply just no longer support that celebrity.
Pretty fair point.
Yeah, second it.
And John, you said I'll use what you said as a closing question, because I've asked this myself before. Where is that line? I heard Eve, who is a hip hop artist and actress, come out and say, "Hey, forget Kanye. Listen to J. Cole," and I think she said Kendrick Lamar or something. Listen to these other artists. Don't listen to Kanye. And I'm thinking, can we still listen to Kanye and also say he's a moron? Can we do both? Yeah. But then I'm thinking, well, then if we're going to do that, if we're going to, okay, anybody who puts out that much bad behavior, okay, then forget them. They're gone. We're not going to listen to them. We're not going to consume them. But then where's the line? So is Kanye the line? Is Nas the line? I'm just using musicians. John Lennon, Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, is it flat out rape, or is it just simple assault, or is it anti-blackness, or what? I ask the question because it's a tricky thing to try to figure out, because most of these people are going to do something awful. So we need, might as well put that in your head. It's going to happen. Sorry. So where is that line that we go, okay, we're done with them. We're not going to put them on the speakers anymore?
That line's going to vary for different people. I have absolutely no problem never listening to anything Kanye West ever does in life. I don't care if I never hear another Beyonce song in my life. It really is. It's not going to faze me. But I also know that I'm just not invested in music like that. And fame doesn't impress me. I've met a lot of famous people. Big deal. So it's not hard for me. If someone, I'm seeing a lot of posts on social media in the year of our Lord Beyonce 2018, or, God is deifying her. Other artists, they did it to Michael Jackson, and they do that to people. I just think for me, that's so foreign and so wild to me. So it's just too easy for me to say, well, I just won't give you any clicks or any listens or any of my money, and it just doesn't affect me in the slightest bit. So it's difficult for me to understand the meaning it may have for someone else. It may be that some artist or their music or some experience you had with them pulled you out of something and it has meaning for you that I don't understand. But I just think that in terms of individuals who mess up or do something that's really just not okay, it's on an individual level, what does that mean to you? And what's more important to you? This person's music and you're continuing to line their pockets, or your belief system? And that's what it comes down to, and it's a choice people have to make every day. And for me, it's not hard because I'm just not invested in a lot of things. I don't have pictures up on the wall of my house. I have them in a box. I love pictures, but, you know, I'm not big on decorating. I'm not big on this, that, or the other. So it's just not hard for me. I may not be the best person to pose these questions to.
No, I think you represent, you know, a part of that spectrum, but frankly, I'm probably closer to you on this. Like I said, that line's pretty low for me. I mean, it's not to say that I can't be entertained by somebody, but I'm not one to become a fan of something. I can recognize a talent and be totally disassociated from that human being as somebody that I feel like I have to have some deeper affinity towards. So no, I have no problem with that. And but I also again, for all that talent that somebody may embody, that talent doesn't have to be something that moves me. So I can recognize it, and I can recognize other people. My wife will be quick to note that when she'll bring up somebody's name, I say, yeah, I'm not that crazy about that person. He did this, or she did that. And she says, where do you learn all this stuff? And I said, because I'm less interested in who they married and how many kids they have and that kind of stuff, because they're not family friends of mine. They are people on a TV screen or a movie screen or on a CD cover. They aren't necessarily you know, people that are a part of my life, and so I guess I'm with you on this. The more difficult part is beyond where that line is for a celebrity is again, how do you know, where's the line for you to change your whatever is your paradigm, whether it's again what has to happen for a Walmart to finally, you know, cross a line to say, no, I'm not shopping there anymore. I mean, I don't know where that line is, and again, it's different for every individual. But I know that there are certain things that I will never participate in the whole Black Friday thing, that kind of craziness. I'm not into the whole Christmas thing anyway, but I don't care how great those deals are they try to offer on a Thursday or a Friday. I'm just not going to sign up for that crap.
And nobody will blame you. Tanja, what are your thoughts on the final question? Where is the line, or where's the line for you?
Well, I think for me the line depends on the person, obviously, but more so, I think what I'm usually concerned with is how certain things shape public opinion and conversation about a certain issue. So I think if a lot of people endorse or don't care or don't say anything about a certain celebrity's actions, it kind of is, there's a risk that this behavior will be generally more sanctioned among young people. That's just how I think. So if we say, okay, this Chris Brown incident, this was we're just going to forgive him and he was young and whatever, then I feel like it sends, as a collective, it sends a message that, okay, this is something that you can bounce back from, or this is something that is a matter of growth and not a matter of crossing a line that should never be crossed. And so my concern is that mostly. So my line is, if people say something silly, I'm not going to stop listening to their music, depending on what it is, because I don't care about. I really don't look to musical artists for political advice or nutrition advice or academic advice or knowledge per se, because that's generally not their lane, even if they present themselves to be as such. I worry when it becomes something that does shape young people's minds or young people's opinions, who often don't have the full picture because of how education is set up. That's when I am able to completely divest and boycott. So, yeah, I don't care about celebrities either. It's just more of a what is their statement and their presence doing for the next generation or not. So that's my usual concern.
Oh, well, I get my political advice. I get all my political advice from Ted Nugent. Oh,
That was funny.
He is the gospel for me when it comes to politics. But I'd like to thank all of you for joining me tonight, and I look forward to the next time I see y'all on this panel, and I wish everybody a good week and good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yahweh.
Sure.